Remember those journals maybe you kept in fifth grade, full of like fantastical stories? Or maybe just complaints about homework? Well, get ready to tap back into that because we're going on a deep dive into some surprisingly insightful journal prompts. And you guessed it, they're written for 10-year-olds.
It does sound a little counterintuitive, right? But sometimes, like, revisiting those simple prompts, but with our adult perspective, can unlock some unexpected self-discovery.
Totally. We found this website offering 50 journal prompts specifically for fifth graders. And let me tell you, some of these had me thinking way harder than I expected. Our mission today, to excavate the hidden gems in these prompts and see how they can spark creativity and maybe even a little self-reflection no matter your age. Ready to unlock your inner fifth grader?
Let's do it.
All right, so the first category is all about exploring daily adventures. Which, okay, that sounds pretty straightforward, but bear with us. One prompt asks you to describe your favorite activity after school. Now, I don't know about you, but my 10-year-old self would have been all about building Lego spaceships and ignoring the real world.
Yep.
Like, completely.
Yeah, what's interesting there is that simple prompt can reveal a lot about our innate passions, even as adults. That kid who loved Legos, maybe they found a love for engineering later on. That focus and problem solving already present.
Right.
Like glimpsing the core of who we are, even back then.
It's so true. Another prompt that caught my eye asks you to imagine you're an animal for a day. Super fun for a kid, but it gets even more interesting when you think about it as an adult.
Yeah, because it becomes almost like a personality test, right?
Oh, totally.
If someone chooses to be a lone wolf, maybe they value independence. But if they pick a bee, drawn to that hive mentality, it points to a need for community maybe they haven't fully explored.
It's fascinating how much we reveal without even realizing it. And then there's this one, think about a day when everything went wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, not exactly a cheerful thought, but I have a feeling this is where the real growth happens.
Absolutely, because it's about building resilience. Think about it. Haven't we all navigated some pretty epic meltdowns back in the day, whether it was a disastrous school play or, just dropping your lunch tray in the middle of the cafeteria?
Oh, yeah.
We all have those moments. But looking back, we survived, right? And not just survive, but learn to navigate challenges, which is something that we still do every single day.
Yeah.
And sometimes those childhood disasters even give us like the tools we need to deal with adult problems.
Right.
Like I used to keep a journal specifically for when things went wrong. And looking back, it's fascinating to see how I was already developing coping mechanisms back then.
I love that. See, even the bad day prompts can be surprisingly insightful. But let's move on from those cafeteria catastrophes and talk about the future. This next category, future dreams and aspirations, really surprised me.
Yeah.
Like, what's so fascinating here is how easily we just dismiss those childhood dreams like they're any less valid just because we've grown older. But there's something to be said for tapping back into that sense of wonder and possibility, right? Like, one prompt asks you to write a letter to your future self. I remember doing this in fifth grade, totally convinced I'd be a famous astronaut archaeologist by now. Obviously, that hasn't quite panned out, but the core of those passions, the desire to explore and uncover, it's still a part of who I am.
And that's what's so powerful about this exercise. It's not about like predicting the future. It's about understanding those core desires that have been with us since childhood. What did you want to be when you grew up, and how has that evolved or maybe even resurfaced in your adult life?
That's a great question. And speaking of things we might have forgotten about, there's a prompt that simply asks, think about a skill you want to learn. Now, I don't know about you, but my to-learn list is a mile long, and I bet it wouldn't be that different from my 10-year-old self's list either.
Exactly. We're naturally wired for curiosity and learning, but somewhere along the way we can lose sight of that. This prompt is a great reminder to tap back into those passions. Maybe you've always wanted to learn a new language or pick up a musical instrument, or maybe even just master the art of baking the perfect sourdough bread. Whatever it is, there's no time like the present, right?
Totally. And I think this next category, personal reflections and growth, can really help with that whole getting started thing. Because let's face it, sometimes journaling can feel a little daunting. But these prompts are surprisingly approachable, even if some of them touch on some pretty deep stuff.
And that's the beauty of journaling, right? It's a safe space to process emotions, work through challenges, and celebrate victories, all without judgment. And sometimes those seemingly simple prompts can lead to the most profound insights.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What kind of prompts are we talking about here? Give me the good stuff.
Well, one that really resonated with me asks you to describe a moment when you felt truly happy. It sounds almost deceptively simple, but think about it. When was the last time you really sat down and reflected on a moment of pure joy? Not just like fleeting happiness, but a moment where you felt truly content and alive.
Wow. You're right. I feel like I need to journal about that later. Okay,
Right.
lighten things up a bit. Because this next category is pure fun, even if you haven't thought about unicorns in a while. It's all about creative imagination and fantasy. And trust me, these prompts are way more powerful than they might seem at first glance.
Yeah, it's easy to think of imaginations as something we leave behind in childhood. But there's actually a growing body of research that shows a direct link between imagination and problem solving, even in adults. When we give ourselves permission to be creative, to think outside the box, it can actually lead to some pretty incredible breakthroughs.
So we're not just doodling unicorns here, we're actually boosting our brain power. I like it.
Exactly. And one of the prompts that really highlights this is the one that asks you to imagine like discovering a secret door in your house. Now, I know that might sound a little childish, but think about it. That sense of wonder, that desire to explore the unknown, is something that we can tap into even as adults, especially when we're facing a challenge or feeling stuck.
I love that. It's like instead of hitting a wall, you find a secret passageway to a whole new solution.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And studies have shown that even brief exercises in imagination, like visualizing yourself overcoming an obstacle or coming up with a creative solution, can actually change your brain chemistry in a positive way, making you more adaptable and resilient in the face of challenges.
Okay, I'm definitely adding find more secret doors to my to-do list. But first we have to talk about the ultimate childhood fantasy, the magic lamp. And yes, there's a prompt for that.
Of course there is. And it's not just about wishing for infinite pizza, although I wouldn't say no to that.
Yeah.
It's about understanding our deepest desires. What do we truly value? What will we change about our lives or the world around us if we had the power to do so?
It's like a window into our own subconscious, right? And sometimes those wishes can reveal things about ourselves that we didn't even realize were important to us.
Exactly. And the best part is there are no limits in journaling. You can wish for the impossible, explore the absurd, and let your imagination run wild without judgment. It's a truly freeing experience.
Okay, I'm sold. But before we get too lost in a world of magic lamps and secret doors, let's move on to our final category, which focuses on something a little more grounded but equally important: friendship and relationships.
And I think these prompts are particularly relevant in today's world, where it's so easy to get caught up in the hustle and bustle of life and forget to nurture those connections that truly matter.
So true. And I love how these prompts encourage us to look at relationships from a different perspective. For example, one asks you to imagine you could create the perfect friend.
Which on the surface might seem a little simplistic, but it's actually a really insightful exercise in understanding what we value in our relationships. What qualities would this ideal friend possess? How would they support us, challenge us, and make our lives richer?
It's like we're reverse engineering a friendship, figuring out what we need and maybe even what we're missing in our current relationships.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it can also help us appreciate the unique qualities of the people we already have in our lives.
Yeah.
Because, let's face it, no one's perfect. But sometimes it takes a little imagination to see the magic in the imperfections.
I love that. Okay, I have to know, are there any other prompts in this category that blew your mind?
Well, there's one that asks, imagine you could spend a day with any historical figure. Now, I'm a bit of a history nerd, so this one really speaks to me, but I think it has something to offer everyone.
Yeah.
Who would you choose to spend the day with? What would you talk about? What could you learn from them?
Ooh, that's a good one. I'm already thinking about who I would choose. See, this is why I love these deep dives. We started with like simple journal prompts, and now my brain is buzzing with all sorts of ideas and insights.
That's the power of a good journaling session, right? It's like unlocking hidden parts of yourself one prompt at a time.
Absolutely. So, dear listeners, we've journeyed from everyday adventures to fantastical dreams and from personal reflections to meaningful connections, all through the lens of fifth grade journal prompts. Who knew those spiral notebooks held so much wisdom?
It just goes to show that sometimes the simplest tools can lead to the most profound discoveries.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Now, here's our challenge for you. What one prompt from this episode sparked your curiosity the most? We want you to actually spend just 5 minutes, that's all we ask, journaling about it today. You might be surprised by what you unlock.
And don't forget to share your reflections in the comments. We love hearing about your deep dive discoveries.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep wondering, and keep journaling.